July 5th, 2000, I can still remember the day well, because from the very moment Rhett hit the world, he was different. He had red hair, of all things. It shocked me and surprised Lorna.
Rhett was 9 pounds. He was like an ice cube. He was just so big. So anyway, we brought him home. He was a super mama's boy. If you can picture this mixture of tough, because he was tough as nails, but still had this incredible, love for me.
So my first memories are Rhett. Whether it was like messing with a babysitter, acting like we were asleep when we weren't, so we could go sneak in and watch Clifford in the afternoon when we weren't supposed to be. He found joy in everything, and the most minute things of life, and the things that would seem totally insignificant to the average person, he'd find a way to make it fun or make it enjoyable, and make it enjoyable for those around him.
Full throttle, happy, energy, all the things you'd want if you could design a blonde-haired, blue-eyed treasure.
There was a special bond that we had. Even as a little kid, he had such a zest for life, never fearful of much of anything. Everything was just wide open. It really was. And most of it done with a smile on his face.
One of the words I would use to describe Rhett is adventurous. And so whether that meant going out and finding an arrowhead on the creek or getting into maybe a little bit of trouble around the house, it was always up to something. And I think that's why I have so many really good memories. In the summer when it would be really hot, we'd always want to put soap and water all over the trampoline and jump on it. And of course it made a huge mess, and we really just couldn't resist because it was a summer day and what else were we supposed to do? And so just to slip and, kind of wrestle with each other. So I would say that's one of my favorite summer memories of both of us.
He loved cowboys and Indians. He wanted to be the cowboy, he wanted to shoot guns, he wanted to be the Indian because he wanted to have a tomahawk, a knife, and a bow.
He had a thing for mohawks. Every summer he'd cut his hair with a big old mohawk down the middle, and if he was on a baseball team and the baseball team was purple, then the mohawk was purple. Everything Rhett did, he was all in.
There was something about the place that we live, the farm. He was so joyful and happy to live out there. Sometimes we'd shoot a bird or two, lots of times he wouldn't see a thing, but I can always remember, just like it was yesterday, we'd be at the other end of the farm walking back, and Rhett always would say, "Dad, I love this place. I'm so glad we got to move out here."
He was just fun, wild, wind in his hair, no fear. Man, you gotta love that.
We loved the fall seasons because fall brought football, which Ryan and Rhett loved, and it brought dove season. Now I would run home from work, and then he would be waiting on me in his camo, and we would go dove hunting as many nights of the week as we could. And we didn't care if we saw a dove or not. He knew that he had to be out there in the middle of everything, and he was.
This one vacation, it was our first kid vacation. We get about an hour from the hotel, and he says, "I'm sleeping with the prize tonight." We ignore him. We don't know what he's talking about. He's crazy. In the middle of this same vacation, everybody's hungry, and Rhett reaches down into his bag and pulls out a 10 lunch kit and starts eating. We're like, "Rhett, what are you doing?" He goes, I knew that there'd be a time y'all wouldn't stop and I'd be hungry. He had packed himself a lunch in this 10 lunch kit, and we were all laughing. He was passing out snacks to all of us. But anyhow, he makes this comment about he's gonna sleep at the prize, and as we get there, we go in, we're trying to figure out where everyone's gonna sleep, who's gonna pull up the cot, and he said, "Well, I already called Mom." And Jimmy's like, "You didn't call Mom, I'm married to Mom, I'm sleeping with Mom." And he said, "No, I said about an hour ago I'm sleeping with the prize. So you can sleep with Ryan and Mark sleep, but whatever, but I'm sleeping with the prize." And he just started calling me the prize. Such a sweet name.
I met Rhett in 4th grade. We sat next to each other. I think we both had at one point in time exchanged the understanding that that's when we met, and we both started liking each other then. He was such a bubbly guy all the time. Didn't really, even when something probably wasn't going his way, still super optimistic, super happy-go-lucky. super, just like proud and like always walked with his shoulders up and just really nice, caring, compassionate.
He was just a kid that feared nothing, did what he wanted to do. His whole life was contagious, and it was something great to be able to grow up with and experience, and just to have those memories and feelings forever.
The way Rhett could make you feel like family in such a short amount of time. He was an awesome person to be around. When he entered the room, he would light it up, and you would know Rhett was in the room as soon as he came in.
He sat there, let Kobe win in arm wrestling. Stuff just makes him feel like an older brother to me and Kobe. So that's like another thing that draws him to me. He's not afraid to show love to anyone.
He was wired differently. He had a really kind, sweet spirit about him. A desire to help people, a desire to make people feel included.
I don't know why, but I always had big trucks with big tires, mud tires or stereo systems and all of that. Boy, he loved it. He would come jump in my truck and just want to listen to music and goof off. Yeah, it was fun, very fun.
He was just such a nice kid and always included other kids. But he was that way to adults too, because I can remember specifically, he might have been 10 years old, and we were at church one day, and he went out of his way to tell me how nice I looked. And what kid does that?
He had a spark about him that really not many other people have. It's hard to explain, but when you hear somebody say he had the it factor, he had it. Everybody wanted to be around him because he made people feel good. He always had a smile on his face. He loved to make people laugh, and he was good at it.
He just had a way of making everybody feel comfortable and involved and included. And I don't know, that's just who he was. And Rhett was always about having adventures and wanting to pull people into them.
What's so funny, he was such an outdoorsman and such a sporting guy. And at the same time, Rhett loved to look good. He loved the right shoes and the right clothes. He had a little bit of a sense of style. He liked doing his hair just right. So it was so funny to kind of juxtapose the outdoor, rugged, I'm getting dirty, I'm getting bruised up, cut up, to I'm gonna look good when I'm out. And Rhett was just kind of hip in a very neat way that everybody just smiled when they were around that.
The way our house is, it's kind of long, and when we moved into it, they thought it was a far room, so they called it the far room, and it stuck. And so that's where they would go down there and play, and shirts would come off, and they would play anything from dodgeball, which sounded like they were tearing the house up.
If you could sum Rhett up in one word, it would be fireball. That dude was always on the go, man. Always smile on his face, always looking for the next adventure. Rhett, man, he loved to come stay at Danny and Melissa's because, for one, he knew he was going to get some good food, and he loved for me to cook for him. I'd be up cooking breakfast in the morning, and there wasn't no need for an alarm clock. He smelt it, he was down.
He loved anything Danny cooked, but he was always, he was just like one of ours. I think he accomplished more in his 15 years than some of us will ever accomplish. He had enough love to fill the universe.
He just drew people to him. To me, it wasn't a coach and player relationship. It was like we were brothers.
You know, you want your quarterback to be the leader of the team, and he was a leader on and off the field. Always had a smile, good attitude that rubbed off on others. People just gravitated toward Rhett.
And a lot of times he would come to me as I'm looking at my chart, making a play call on the football field, and say, "Coach, I think we need to run this." And I said, "All right, buddy, you got it. You see something in the defense, let's go." And 9 times out of 10, he was pretty accurate and right on the money. But he's just a very intelligent young man. And it shined not only in the classroom, but also on the athletic field.
He had that engraved in his head that he was going to lead McGregor to a state championship. And with the kind of kid that he was, you believed it.
Again, he played fearless. As a dad, you'd be sitting there in the stands, And I would always do my best to try to be humble about it because Rhett wasn't big and he wasn't fast, but he was good. He really could. He could play some ball. And again, it wasn't because of all the talent, it was just he played free. Because the same way he lived is the same way he played all sports. And he did it with joy. That's what always made Rhett to me so much different, is he did so many things with joy.
This is the best Rhett story ever. His driver's permit. So this is November. He needed me to go with him to Gatesville to get it. So we do it, and I start driving on the way home. He says, Mom, pull over and let me drive. So I pull over and change him, then he's driving. He's like, Mom, that's a terrible song. It's gotta be a cool song. Change it to a cool song. He's like, do I look cool? Mom, seriously, do I look cool? I can't wait to ride around this summer with Kate. I can't wait to ride around with Bella. And I was like, Rhett, you're gonna have rules. I mean, you're not just gonna be Mom. And he blows right through a stop sign. Blows through it. I mean, I said, Rhett, you just ran a stop sign. He said, it's okay, Mom, I'll catch it next time. I'll catch it next time. So anyway, that's one of my favorite Rhett stories. I can still hear him saying, I'll catch it next time.
You know, that's what's on my arm here. I have it tattooed now. It says Rhett Jet. But I normally just called him the Jet. And it wasn't, you know, hey, Rhett Jet. It was, hey, Jet. That's just what I called him because when we were little, we used to love watching or the kids did, loved watching the movie Sandlot. And one of the characters was Benny the Jet Rodriguez. And Rhett would just sit there. He loved that show. And that's what they called him, the Jet. And Rhett wasn't probably 2, 3, maybe 4 years old when he started watching that. And that's really, it kind of stuck because that's what Rhett reminded us of. He was always moving fast, like a jet.
Rhett would chop. Everything he did was with his hands like this. He'd call it chopping. And he just decided one day, yep, I don't want y'all to call me just Rhett anymore. I want to be called Rhett Jet. And so that started the Rhett Jet, and some people just call him Jet after a while. I called him, and this sounds so long and made up, but I called him Rodimus Jetimus.
When he was little bitty, before he became Pigman, he was going to do 2 things in life. He was going to be a Heisman Trophy winner, and he was going to be an astronaut. And then when he finished doing that, the last thing he was going to do is going to finish up his career on the back of a garbage truck. Heisman Trophy because that was the pinnacle of college football. He wanted to be an astronaut because who doesn't want to go to space as a little kid, 3, 4, 5-year-old? Man, what he really wanted to do is finish his career was on the back of that garbage truck. Because how cool is it to watch the guys riding up and down the road, hanging off the back of a truck, going up and down the roads. You thought that was the coolest thing ever. And I thought, that's my boy, ambition. You go be that, Rhett. If you want to be a garbage man, you're going to be a good one.
Rhett was the class president, and he was the quarterback. And so one day they were having meetings all over the school. And the meeting was led by the class president. And as I come back through the cafeteria, Rhett is leading his charge. And he hadn't really grown that tall yet, so he was kind of short. So he was standing on a chair. He had red jeans on and a striped shirt, and he was just talking to his classmates, and everybody was engaged and laughing, and I thought, there's my boy. And I didn't say anything. I just remember seeing him and thinking, he gets it. He gets how to include everybody. He gets how to have fun. He's too short for everyone to see him, so I'll pull up a chair. And he just, I don't know, I could just tell you story after story of things that matter that Rhett did.
That's just the way he was wired. God put something inside of the Jet. And it just seemed to be missing. A really unique way of making people feel like they belonged. Like they belonged.
A coach came to us and said, hey, thanks for letting Rhett give those shoes to that kid. And I said, okay, I don't really know what you're talking about. He said, there was a kid in gym or athletics, a new kid that moved in, and he was having trouble doing stuff because his shoes were too tight. And Rhett brought him a pair the next day. So I went home and asked Rhett. Rhett had a thing for shoes. They had to be KDs or this or that, and he kept the boxes, and the shoes wore out. He'd put the shoes back in there and close them, and he was going to give them to his kids. But this kid's feet were hurting, and Rhett gave him a good pair of shoes, like not a worn-out pair of shoes. Just went in his closet, and he said, I didn't want to give him something old. I wasn't sure he'd ever really had a new pair of shoes. I wanted to give him something good, and I didn't necessarily want him to know it came from me, because I didn't want him to feel bad. And he did those kind of things all the time, and he never told people. And that's what made him so different than everybody else. He didn't seek attention. He sought to make everybody that he came in contact with feel special.
Because he wanted to make sure everybody was included. And I've said it 100 times, I would like to think that that's something that Lorna and I taught him as being really good parents. No credit for it.
He wasn't perfect, but he was perfect for us. And he was perfect for a world that needed someone who was different and who could make sure everybody had a place.
When I think of him, I think of blonde hair, blue eyes, and freckles, and a smile so big coming right back at you.
The thing that sticks out to me about Rhett is that he was truly my biggest fan. And I can't say that really about a lot of people except for Rhett, because just the way he would, right after an event, he would run up to you, bear hug you, and then just start bragging about you.
Fun, kind, adventurous, joyful, always looking to make a friend.
The words of an old song just jumped into my head from The Sound of Music when the nuns were singing about Maria, and they said, how do you hold a moonbeam in your hands? And that's Rhett. He was so many things to so many different people, and you couldn't catch up to him. He was everywhere.
He was a leader, not by being vocal about it, just the people wanted to be around him.
Yeah, he was a magnet for people.
Good term.
He was.
Good term, absolutely.
People recognized that in Rhett. Loved him for it.
I had just picked up a new case, and it was the biggest, most demanding case I'd ever had, and it started in the fall of 2015. And during that fall, I spent way too much time at the office. So that Christmas Eve, I got home about 4 o'clock, and Rhett was waiting on me. We were going to go deer hunting at the back end of the place. And it was the first time that I can remember that just he and I got to ride the Polaris. And we were talking about how fun it was, how cool it was, and it was Christmas Eve, and all was good. And I dropped him off on the other side of the creek, and I went back on the other side, and we were texting each other the whole time. Rhett, you seen anything? Yeah, Dad, I see a doe over here. I'm gonna pass. Dad, you seen anything? Nah. But it's so nice just being out here. It gets close to sun going down, and I remember Rhett texting, Dad, I'm ready, come pick me up, let's go. Let's go for a ride and let's go home. I jumped in the Polaris, crossed the creek, pick him up. And again, it was just one of those moments where Rhett always had a real appreciation. He had a real appreciation of time alone with me on the farm in the midst of doing what he loved best. And as a dad, man, looking back now, it's just what, again, today leaves such a hollow place in your heart, but in the grand scheme of life, going, oh my God, I thank you that you gave me those moments. That you gave me a love like that, a connection like that with the jet. Because I can remember riding back and how happy he was. Man, it was just his thing. Me and him and on his farm hunting, and hadn't seen a thing, and it didn't matter.
The day started, I was in my room doing my Bible study. Rhett came sliding in. It was the Monday of Christmas break, so we'd had one whole week. And then this was going to be the second week. So Christmas was on Friday. It was week 2. He had the whole week off. He'd gotten a crossbow and a all kinds of weaponry and outdoor stuff. And
boy, that just grabbed Rhett's attention. So he had spent those 3 days YouTubing and figuring out how to use that crossbow and how to hook up his GoPro to his crossbow to his compound bow and just shooting, and he was really good at it.
So he came in there and he said, and I had just gotten a new white bedspread. So I had just put the bedspread on, and he got on the end of my bedspread, and I said, Rhett, well, there's a new rule. This is white. You are never clean. You can't lay on this bedspread anymore. He's like, okay. So he rolls off, gets on the floor, and he's talking to me and asked me what my Bible study was about. And I said, what are you going to do today? And he said, I'm going to go across the street and see what Baby Bear got for Christmas, and then I'm going to meet some guys and we're going to shoot our bow and arrows or whatever.
I remember that day he had told me maybe the night before he had a plan that he was going to go hog hunting. The hogs were back at the farm, and at the time, Kevin Huffman, the guy that leases the place from us, he had made a deal with Rhett. He was going to pay him $10. Every hog you shoot, Rhett, I'll give you $10. And so it was like a job for Rhett. I mean, really, that's why Rhett was going to end up being pig man. He was going to somehow find a way to get paid, make a living off hunting hogs.
Time is distorted that day, but I started some food in the crock pot, and I had to run across the street to Tammy's to get something. And while I was there, Rhett drives up on the Polaris, and Chase meets him. So Tammy and I are at the front door because I'm leaving. Rhett's walking up, and Chase is 7, and they had the cutest relationship. He's running out to meet Rhett, and Rhett's like, buddy, what'd you get? And they're kind of hugging, and Rhett walks in between me and Tammy, and I say, Rhett, I'm going to take Mars' friend home, and dinner's in the crock pot. I'll be back in a little while. And I bumped into him. He's like, okay, Mom. And I turned around and I watched him walk off. That was it. Man, you'd think you'd know, but...
So Rhett and Chase go to his room. They're in the bunk beds looking at things he got for Christmas. Chase really wanted a G-Shock watch just like Rhett's or similar, so Rhett helped me pick one out. So they're comparing their watches, and
we went upstairs. We got some plastic soccer ball. He got on his knees again. We played soccer football. I would try to get somewhere. He would try to come back. I would try to tackle him. We would wrestle.
everything that they did together was happening. And then they'd run downstairs and get something to drink.
They were eating snacks, drinking tea at the bar. And then he comes downstairs. They were playing up there for probably an hour, hour and a half maybe.
The girls and I were in the living room watching a movie. Chase was begging him to spend the night because sleepovers were part of things too. And Rhett was saying, well, I'm gonna go hunting, but we'll do it another time. Like it's no big deal. And, Chase is okay. And
we talked about it the day before when we were shooting bows, and I texted him and said, are we still a go for it? It was him. He said, yeah, let me check with my daddy.
So I knew he was going hog hunting that day, and sometime, I guess around 2 o'clock that afternoon, I get a text message from Rhett that says, hey, can Hunter January, can he and I go hog hunting today? I didn't see the text for a little while, and I respond back, and I said something to the effect of, yeah, Rhett, just be sure to be extra careful.
Texted me back and said, yep, it's a go. So I said, all right, I'll meet you in 15. So I started driving out here.
The last text message I ever got back from Rhett would have been around 2:30, December 28th, 2015. He says, I won't let you down, Pop. I'll carry those words with me forever until I see him in heaven again. I knew how to tell him, Rhett, you never did.
So he's been here a while, and he said, okay, Tam, I'm going home. And I'm like, okay, well, that sounds great. Be careful. I'll see you soon. And
I was watching Pitch Perfect on TV, and he walks out the door, and then he opens it back up, and he's like, hey, Paige, spoiler alert, the Bellas don't win, part of the movie or whatever.
And then he laughs, this giant smile, and thinks that's just hilarious, and leaves, runs out the door.
That morning I woke up and it was a just your average day. I had a friend spend the night that night, and so we were hanging out in the morning, and Rhett was kind of around the house, and so when it got time to take her home, my mom and I took her home, and she lived in Temple, and so we dropped her off at her house, and we went to Academy, I believe, and as we were walking in, my mom stops in her tracks and puts her hand over her heart and said, something's weird, like something's odd, something's, I don't know, and I just like kind of thought nothing of it, like that was kind of weird.
I went upstairs to go watch TV, and our upstairs window faces the front of the house, and it faces the road and our driveway, and on the across the street is Lauren and Jimmy's house. So we can see each other, even though it's, I don't know, quarter of a mile distance away. I just happened to look outside, and I could see lights on some type of vehicle, and noticed that the lights were not horizontal, they were vertical.
All of a sudden, I hear him saying, there's a car turned over in the road.
I jumped in the truck, drove down our driveway, and by that time, I could see an ambulance coming down the road.
I run out the front door, and my kids are following me.
The 2 paramedics were there. There was also another individual that had driven up on the accident. He was there.
And I can see the Polaris turned over. So I stop and I tell them to go back in the house.
When I got out of the truck at the end of the driveway, the paramedics were standing over the ATV, and I saw Rhett laying underneath the ATV that was on its side. I remember seeing his face, the color in his face. I knew it wasn't good. I ran up there, I just asked him to move, and I got in the middle of the ATV, stood over Rhett, and picked the ATV up and got it off of him. And tried to get out of the way, and I was hoping that just let the paramedics, do their thing. The paramedics said, we need to call his parents. We need to get them here as soon as possible.
And in a frantic, not overly loud or screaming, just frantic, it's, Jimmy, you gotta get home fast. Rhett's hurt, and he's hurt real bad. You gotta get home quick. And man, David's a calm person. And I knew when he said those words, I knew it was bad.
Jimmy wanted to know details. He wanted to know what was going on. I didn't really know what to tell him because there wasn't a lot going on, but I didn't want to tell the father that nobody's trying. They had tried, but it was already too late by the time we got there.
By now I'm on Highway 6. And I've got the steering wheel grip with 2 hands as hard as I could squeeze it. And my flashers are on, and my foot's as far down on the gas pedal as it'll go. I pull over in the ditch, throw my truck into park, and I can remember people. I can remember firemen. I can remember police officers. And I remember as I'm running through them on the road, I remember being so distraught seeing that nobody was moving fast. And Rhett's laying in the road, face down. And he's got his hunting jacket on, his big camo jacket. He's got his favorite hunting hat. It's one of those big, warm, wintertime camo hats with the big floppy sides, and you buckle it up. It's unbuckled, it's loose. His camo pants and his tennis shoes. And I remember laying down right next to him on that road. I'm literally laying on top of him. I've got my arm thrown over the side of him. And I've got my other hand and I'm rubbing it through his perfect blonde hair. And I'm whispering in his ear, Rhett, get up. And I can remember distinctly at some point in there knowing he wasn't getting up. And then somehow I knew I was going to have to hold it together, because immediately there were all these decisions that had to be made. I remember telling my dad to go tell Ryan. But I remember all I could think about was Lorna. All I could think about was Lorna.
So I turn on the candle aisle and I look down and Jimmy's calling me. And I remember thinking, because we weren't the kind, we communicate always and we're always friendly, but man, he's been so busy lately. Why is he calling me in the middle of the day? And I answered the phone and he said, where are you? And he said it just like that. And I said, I'm in Temple. And my mind's thinking, I must have missed a date. I must have been supposed to meet him somewhere. We never talk to each other like this. We're never fast and short. And I said, why? Where are you? And I said, well, I'm at Marshall's in Temple. Jimmy, is something wrong? And he said, yes. Rhett's been in a wreck, and I'm going to send someone to pick you up. And I said, like, what kind of wreck, Jimmy? What kind of wreck? By this time, Mara turns the corner, and she starts crying.
I hear my mom frantically on the phone, and at that point, I was like, well, I wonder what she's up to. So I went and talked to her, like, what's going on? And she wasn't really concerned with me at the time, which I wouldn't be either. And then finally, she hung up the phone. She told me that Rhett had been in an accident, and we weren't sure. Well, it was a wreck is what we heard at the time. And so I wasn't sure who it was with, where it was, what vehicle it was in. We really knew nothing. And so all we knew was someone was on their way to pick us up and they were going to take us to whatever hospital he was going to.
It's dawn, Shirley's in the middle, I'm against the window. All this food is behind me and Mars in the back corner over there of this truck. And we get in, everybody's got their seatbelts on it, and Dawn starts driving, and I say, what hospital are we going to? Silence. What hospital are we going to? Silence. On the third time, I said, what is wrong with y'all? Somebody answer me, what hospital are we going to? And this thing just came over me. And Dawn said, we're not going to a hospital. I'm going to take you to Jimmy. And Jimmy will take you where you need to be. And I said, Mara, he's dead. He's dead. Otherwise, this would be a medical emergency and they wouldn't be taking me home.
And her heart just exploded in that car pretty much. And she said, Mara, he's dead. And I was like, no, he's not. There's no way. There's no way that my brother and my best friend could be dead. It just couldn't happen. I couldn't believe it. And so I refused to believe it until we got back to the house.
I remember her screaming. She says she didn't scream. It was me wailing all the way home. And I thought, I should jump out of this truck. I should jump out of this truck. If I jump out of this truck, I don't have to know. I will never have to be there. But my daughter was in the back seat. And then this phone comes up. And it's the chief of police. His name pops up in the truck. And he comes over the loudspeaker. And I'm screaming, don't answer that. Because there's something about knowing. And then really knowing. And the longer I could go between knowing. I said, please don't answer that phone. Please don't answer that phone. And he clicked it on and said, I have Lorna in my car. I'll call you back. So that went away. And I looked at Shirley. And she had a necklace on with Elena on it. And I grabbed the necklace. And I said, am I going to need one of those? Am I going to need one of these? And she said, look, I don't have any details. I don't know. You need to close your eyes. You need to breathe.
I was upstairs watching The Flash, and in our upstairs window, it faces out towards the road, and the road's not but 100 yards from our house. And so from the road, I could see these lights flicker across the back wall of the upstairs, and they're red and blue like police lights. So I get up and go look at the window, and I see the police lights and I see the Polaris out there, and I'm just like, well, Rhett probably drove out to see what was going on, like no big deal. But at this point I'm curious, so I kind of like jog down the stairs. He calls out to me, he's like, Ryan, and I meet him about halfway down the stairs, and he just says, it's your brother. He's no longer with us. And so then from there, I kind of go into like a bit of like a panic frenzy almost. I don't know what to do. I was in shock just because I'd just seen him. He just asked me if I wanted to do something with him. And so I was just like, no way. So I went in his room immediately afterwards and just like started looking through all his stuff. And at this point, like, I'm starting to comprehend what my grandpa said to me and what it meant. And I'm just losing my mind, basically, crying my eyes out. And I just remember asking over and over, like, why him? Why him? That doesn't make sense. This doesn't make any sense to me. Because I didn't want to go out to the road. I knew I didn't want to see that image. But I walked across the pasture, and it was just such like a somber, sad walk.
Ryan didn't need to see what was going out there, but he had to get out of the house. I remember just watching. It was almost surreal. Watching them walk across the pasture as the hearse is coming. And I helped them pick up my son off the road and put him on a gurney. Still waiting on Lorna. They had taken Rhett away, and so I had walked up to the house, up to my mom and dad's house, because I knew that's where my mom and dad were. And I knew that's where Ryan was. And in a few minutes, Lorna shows up.
And I begged them, please keep going. Please keep going if we don't stop. And then I realized they were going to turn, so I said, I don't want to see anything that I can't unsee. I don't want to see anything that I can't unsee. And they said, baby, you're not. And so we turned down the road. And you could see chaos everywhere. You could see, I don't know what it looked to me like, fire trucks everywhere, paramedics everywhere, and ambulance and people. And they pulled into Mickey and Jean's driveway, which are Jimmy's parents who lived before us. So you could look down, there's our house. You could look down the road and see the chaos. And I see Ryan, my stoic, tower of strength. And he's got his hands shoved down into this blue polo jacket that I just gave him for Christmas. And he's weeping. And then I see, that's through the front windshield. And then I see Jimmy walking towards me. And his mom and dad are standing behind him. And he has on this coat. It's like the police put it over him. And I opened the door and I said, "He's dead, isn't he?"
I heard the words come out of my dad's mouth, "Yeah, he's gone." And from then, it was numb. I went numb. It's hard to remember a lot of that day, but I knew that instantly after hearing it, I needed to see Ryan because he was the only one that would know what it was like to lose a sibling. You know, my parents deal with a child, and Ryan and I lose our siblings. So I remember just running to him and giving him the biggest hug because at that point, you know, we were just missing our brother already.
One of the first things I remember was when I finally saw my dad again, hugging him, when my mom and my sister got back, hugging and crying with them. But yeah, like I said, after I was told, it all kind of gets blurry.
Jimmy and Lorna decided to go to their house, but people started gathering, and the first request was keep people away from the house, which is understandable, but impossible. So people started gathering in the house. Jimmy and Lorna sat on the couch, and before we knew it, it wasn't an hour or so later, there probably were 60 people in that house. Quiet as a church. You could feel the presence of God in the place, even though, you know, I know Jimmy and Lorna probably couldn't feel anything but numbness and confusion. Everybody stayed quiet. There was not a sound made. And basically, we were all just doing what we knew, and all we knew to do was just sit with people in their pain.
And the paramedic, she came and saw us. About 6 weeks after Rhett died, she called and asked if she could come see us. She made us something. And she said, "I've never been more moved." Rhett looked like he had a baby face, and he had a hat on that day that was strapped around his head, so all you could see was his face. So they really thought he was super young, but she could see his bangs. And she said, I brushed those bangs across his head, and I knew I was dealing with someone that was in heaven. I could feel the peace. I could feel this horrible scene, but there was something beautiful there too. And she told us she struggled with, she told us his neck was broken. We didn't know that. So what happened was when he left their house, he, I guess, tried to drift and turned over and landed on it. A car drove up and saw this child trapped under he wasn't moving. So he jumps out, he runs over there. He can't pick it up. He calls 911. He's an ex-Marine. So he had a rope in the back of his truck. He went to the back of his truck, got the rope out, tied it on there, tried to help pull this off of him, and the rope snapped. So he just had to stand there until the paramedics showed up. When the paramedics showed up, her name's Janet. She's a friend of mine now. Janet, as she's running up to the scene, Park's running, "Have you seen any life?" And he said, "Nothing. Hasn't moved since I got here." And so she leans down. She's trying to do the math, and she figures it's been between 18 and 20 minutes under this thing, no oxygen, broken neck. And she made the choice to, I'm not gonna try crazy measures. And she needed me and Jimmy to okay that. She said, "I've lost sleep, I've cried, I've even been to my supervisor, and my supervisor says every protocol in the book says to do what you did. You don't bring, and we're so thankful. We told him, thank you, thank you, thank you. Rhett didn't want to be, he went full throttle here, had a little fender bender, and Jesus said, "Oh, come on." And he went full throttle there, and there was no dwindling away, there was no suffering, there was no, a child without his capacities or the ability to walk and run. So
we got together in our bedroom that night. As we gathered around, we were literally praying, the four of us, for God to see us through, to hold us, to put our lives back together, to be there with us. We sat in silence a lot. But I remember Lorna and I would wake up in the morning, but we would sit up in bed. And the mornings are always the hardest, at least it seemed that way, because you wake up and for the first little while, you're certain that Rhett's not dead, that what you were thinking, or it was just a dream, it was a bad dream. And when you wake up, life is normal again until those first few seconds pass, and then you go, he's dead, he's not coming back, and I gotta do this the rest of my life. And so there would be that period in the mornings we would always really have to seem like shake something out of your head that just did not want to leave.
And there were a lot of hard days, but I always got up. Oh, I never stayed in bed. I got up, I tried to take a shower, and I'm not judging you if you did stay in bed. That's what I was going to say a minute ago, that when people tell me, I know people that this ruined their life and you've done so good. And immediately, I want to take up with the mom who gave up. I want to tell her, it's okay. If you're not ready to look at the sunshine yet, don't. But don't shut it out. Because here's the deal. I had no choice, and Rhett was not coming back. He's not coming back. I have lost Rhett. So am I willing to lose my marriage? Am I willing to lose my Ryan? Am I willing to lose Mara? Am I willing to just go through the motions and never find the joy and the love of Ryan getting married or going to college or winning state or Mara having a baby? And I just saw that the options were either add more loss or fight for what you have. And it's not easy. And there's no formula. But just don't close your door on the fact that there's more than one path you can take. You don't have to stop. You don't have to fold up. And I feel like God has always been faithful.
At first, just seems like holding life together. Literally, physically holding life together. Am I gonna die? Holding life together to keep yourself alive, to keep Lorna alive. And then somewhere along the way, we even started not just holding life together, but putting it back together.
You know, Jimmy did a great job of leading us. We didn't grieve the same, but we did not grieve differently. And he gave me a lot of room to be heartbroken. And I gave him a lot of room to not have to be so tough. And we gave our kids a lot of room to talk or not talk. One of the best things I did is I started doing jigsaw puzzles. And Mara and I would sit there. And you don't have to talk the whole time you're doing it, but we had a need to be near each other. She's 12, she's full of fear. Because you hear about people dying, but really? Like here one day, gone the next? So those puzzles were super therapeutic.
I never woke up in the morning and didn't see him or didn't go over and talk to him or mess around with him. It was just all those thoughts that kind of piled up together as I walked in his room again, that I was like, wow, this really did happen. It wasn't a bad dream. I didn't make this up. And unfortunately, I can't pinch myself and wake up from this. Going back to school was a big step in the healing process for me because I did have a great group of friends around me. The teachers, principals, everybody knew, all my coaches. It's not like anybody didn't know what happened.
Like my feelings were kind of numb, and so I just went through the motions at school, but a lot of my friends were feeling the same thing that I were because they were all really close to him too. So they kind of held me up, and we did that for each other, and we got through those days.
It's hard. It gets better. There's always something still there, but I think the biggest thing for me was just being with family, being with friends, and just kind of getting through it together.
A lot of things remind me about him. we had a thing where we would send each other really pretty sunsets or sunrises. So anytime I see a really pretty one, I think of him. And then just a bunch of little things. Anytime I eat ice cream, I think of him. We always love to share our love for ice cream. I think about him daily, to be honest.
That hurts. I'm always gonna hurt. But I'm always gonna reach for hope. Because hope feels better than hurting. And I'm not gonna, someone told me once, and it really made sense to me, when you first do this, your heart is so shattered, there are shards of glass everywhere. It is broken, your heart is broken, and every move you made, you bleed. Every single move. But over time, some of those sharp edges get smoothed out, and it's true, I can move a lot of different ways and not hurt, but sometimes I'll move and I'll get stabbed. And I'm okay with that. It's the price of love.
It's one of those things where it's tough to, there's no prescription for it, right? There's prescription for illness, there's prescription for mental illness, but there's no prescription for grief specifically, and it's so individualized. But what I would say is, and it's gonna be really hard at first, is write down some of your better memories. Write down some of the best memories and happiest memories of him.
Right after he passed away, Lorna had these Christmas ornaments made to have a memory of him, and so we hang that on the tree every year, and she said that makes her heart happy to know that he's, a part of our Christmas every year.
But grief kind of comes in waves. We've kind of all talked about that. You'll be going along and everything's fine, and then you'll just have a wave that kind of hits you. And initially those waves are pretty big. They take you down, and then they get a little smaller as you go out. And but they still come. And just knowing that happens, and that if you're a friend or a relative of folks, that's what they're going through in a much deeper, much more challenging way than what we can even fathom as being close friends. And
we all went through it together, so we all have a mutual understanding to check in on each other, and just any milestone that occurs, birthdays or the death day, anything like that, we all make sure we're there for one another. Helps that you just remember the good times, you don't really know what you're missing till it's gone. So
I don't think I've missed a birthday going out to Rhett's grave. I haven't missed the day he died. I try to find myself trying to get out and do something, take my mind off of it, but when I'm going through tough times I turn to Rhett, and I usually listen to Tim McGraw's Live Like I'm Dying, because it was played at his funeral. And yeah, it gets the tears rolling sometimes, but it always reminds me that he is watching over me, and I can do something to honor his name.
Man, if you know somebody that has lost somebody, mention their name. Someone says, I don't want to remind you. Are you kidding? I've never forgotten. I think about Rhett all the time. Rhett is always, this is the honest truth. We're at 5 years and a month. There's not been one single day, not one day in 5 years a month that I haven't said his name. And that's going to be the rest of my life. They were real. They were a part of you. And they're worth mentioning, and they're worth remembering. They're worth laughing at. And Ryan and Jimmy will make fun of Rhett sometimes. I'm like, stop it! He's not here to defend himself, but over a bad throw he made in a football game or this or that. But we treat him like a real person. He was a real person. And the idea, maybe it's more of an antiquated idea of it hurts too much, sweep him under the rug. That's not the answer. Carry the picture. Talk about him. Golly, if you can think of something in the present tense where I can say, I did this because of Rhett, or Rhett is, to use a present tense verb with Rhett is super special. Like all this right now, I think Rhett is going to make a difference. And that's a big deal.
I care about what he did while he was here. Eventually everybody's got to go, and that's a tough realization to come to, but so why talk about death all the time? Why make it about the fact that he's gone? Focus on the good that he did while he was here, Did he help people? Did he leave a legacy? That has been something that's been so healing to me and my family, just knowing that the impact that Rhett had on people. And because that's really all you leave, all anyone can hope to leave after they're gone is a legacy of loving people and treating people well and doing right by those around them.
In the beginning, it's really hard to talk about things, but the further out it goes, I think to talk about it kind of makes it better. And I know that's kind of hard to do with the people around you, but I would say talking to the people around you and opening up about what you're feeling helps.
There really aren't any rules, and if you need more time to grieve, grieve. And if you feel good today, feel good today. And if you know there's something you can't go to, I really struggled with sporting events. But remember, I had a son that's a junior and a daughter that's in the 7th grade, both really good athletes, and then Rhett dies. And so I did miss some of their events, but they were real gracious with me. I just feel like I can't do that today. I can't sit in the stands.
It does make you think twice about what's really important. Are materials or things really important? No, they're not. Your family and friends are.
It's made me a better father. I know my kids probably won't agree with me right now, but I'm hard on them, but I tell them I love them a lot. And that's something that he taught me. I tell my players that I coach that I love them. And they're like, Coach, that's kind of weird. I was like, no, it's not weird. I said, it's okay for me to tell you that, I love you. I really do mean that. And so he's taught me in my family that word love. Like we don't shy away from that word.
Something that terrible happens and you try to make good of it. And that's, in my eyes, the point of things such as Archway. And you're trying to take the worst thing that's ever happened to you and find some beauty in it. So whether that's my greatly improved relationship with my sister, real conversations that I'm having with my mom, or just, the strengthening of what already was a really good relationship with my dad. Little things like that, little changes as a result of something that terrible, are ways you can find beauty in it. Because an event like that changes you. And it's really kind of up to you whether it totally breaks you or whether you try and make something of it.
The day it happened, my dad told Ryan and I that you don't need to step in and fill your brother's shoes, because there's actually no way that we could do that just because of the person he was. But I think that definitely made Ryan and I a whole lot closer. We bonded over the heartbreak we were feeling, and Ryan and I are pretty close now. And Rhett was kind of the glue in between us. He could mess with Ryan and he could mess with me, and we could all hang out together. And Ryan and I would have been fine either way, but I just think that definitely because of this, Ryan and I have definitely grown together.
One other distinct memory I remember having, I was laying on the couch, maybe the 4th or 5th day. And again, lots of conversations with God. Man. Just wrestling with God. There wasn't a whole lot of peace in him. But I remember praying to God, begging, please, Lord, give me something that comes from Rhett's death that's good, that lasts forever, that's purposeful, that's meaningful, that lasts forever, that makes a difference, that would not have otherwise come about had Rhett lived. There's got to be something good that comes from Rhett's death. There have been a lot of those moments. I thought they would come in different ways. The first thing that was always on my mind is, well, we'll adopt a kid. And we haven't done that yet, not to say that still won't happen, who knows? But there have been lots of things that have come about, new relationships with people we've met that we would never have met, that have shown and showered kindness upon us that I would never have imagined. Old friendships that either drifted away or broken. People showed up on our door. We've renewed friendships. We've gone places that we would never have gone with those new friendships. So from that moment to the moment I'm sitting here, we've seen so many ways that God has blessed us with events and opportunities and moments. But for all those people out there listening who may have to go through this at some point, I would say that the rules are there are no rules. I would start with that. The rules are there are no rules. Whether it's the next sermon, the next series of books, the next pastor, the next person, the next me that shows up on your doorstep, the best advice I could ever give someone, the rules are there are no rules of how you grieve. That is completely personal between you and I sure hope your God. Because you'll find a way. And if you've got a spouse, between you and your spouse, and you're going to have to give each other leeway, a lot of leeway, for each of you to grieve in the way that you want to grieve. For any husbands and wives out there, I know there's not another person in the world that shares the same love I have for Rhett and the same grief and longing I have for Rhett. She is the only person in the world who knows the same depths of that love and of that grief that I know. And so I'm going to do whatever I can to preserve that relationship. Why would I not want to keep that relationship, do whatever I have to do to keep that relationship with the one person that knows how I feel? Everybody else can talk about it. Everybody else can come in and say, I know how you feel, I've done this. No, you don't. She's the only one. I'm the only one. So keep those relationships. And people will tell you, well, you need to do it for your kids. That gets a little old too, but yeah, there's a lot of truth to that. If you got other kids, then yeah, continue to be a good dad, continue to be a good mother for your other kids, and maybe for the kids you don't even have yet. Maybe for that adopted child that you don't even know yet. And then for the kids that you've got here, man, just ratchet it up and be the best parent you can be. And for me, part of my journey was getting back to work. For Lorna, it was getting away from work. There'll be dads out there that need to get back to work, and man, it's going to be hard. I would pray that you would have a group of people surrounded by you as I did with the endless grace that they gave me. Not only the people I work with, but the people I work for also.
Jimmy, he has been a rock, and he has let me, he has never once tried to stifle my grief or change my grief, judged me for my grief. He did finally tell me at 2 years to not ask the question why anymore. Lorna, we have to quit asking that question. It is futile. It's just a lesson in futility to ask that question. We don't know why, we'll never know why, and I think by the time we do know why, it'll be because we're there and we won't care why. Just give me that boy and let me kiss his cheeks. I can't wait to do that. But we always wanted Rhett's life to matter. And truly, this is crazy, but Jimmy and I always knew Rhett's life. Before any of this happened, we knew Rhett was put on this earth to make a difference because he was so different than most people. Just this magnet and this light and this kindness and this hope and this joy. And I think his life still matters. Yeah. I can really say 5 years later, I have a good life. I used to have the fairy tale. Then I had a nightmare. And now, the sun's coming back up. The sun's coming back up, and I'm ready to see and be present and offer hope to people in this world, because it's not always an easy journey.
A lot has changed in the life of of what I call my 4 herrings.
We're empty nesters. That's been really fun, which we didn't know how that would be. Our kids are doing exactly what they're supposed to be doing, which is really fun to watch. And life just seems kind of good again.
And as I think back to the days after Rhett dying, I wouldn't have wanted to practice law another day. Not a month, not a year, certainly not 5 years. And now I think about, we're 6 years beyond Rhett's death, and I look forward to going to work still. I look forward to the things that the people I get to serve, and there's a bit of hope in me that holds out. Maybe one day I'll get to go to the courtroom with my son. How cool would that be?
Yeah, I was very excited about going to Baylor Law School. First of all, it's a great school, and second of all, it gave me the opportunity to come back home and be closer to family. And a large part of my reasoning for wanting to be an attorney is I really want to help people. I know Rhett's accident had an impact on that because I want to help families who are in a similar situation to where we are. And the closer I get to graduating from law school, the more it seems like a reality of maybe going into practice one day with my dad and opening up Herring and Herring or Herring and Sons.
In August, I went off to college in Lubbock at Texas Tech. It's been fun and exciting to learn. Track has obviously been different. You go from McGregor, where you can show up to track meets and be really successful, and going up to, a Division I where things are really, really competitive. And so it's kind of hard to make a mark for yourself, but it's something that I've adjusted to, and I'm learning to start to make a mark for myself. I am majoring in biology at the moment. I want to be a dentist.
After losing Rhett, I thought I'll never go back to the classroom, but there was a seed there. That is my passion. That's what I do. I love kids, I love teaching, and it just kind of started growing, and I thought maybe I'll substitute first. When I went up there to sign up for substitute teaching, an English teacher had just quit in the middle of the year, and that never happens. And so I walked right back in. I left at Christmas 6 years ago when we lost Rhett, and I walked right back into the same hall in the English department. 6 years later, who knew it would take that long, and I'm home.
Of course, I always loved football and loved the position of quarterback, the skill that goes into it, the leadership, the intangibles. And I thought I had something to offer to other young kids. Looking back on what I did, and it was a way to stay connected to the game a little bit. And I will say in the last year or so, a few people have reached out to me. Would you mind doing this? Would you be interested? And I've really enjoyed it again. And so it's something that's come back that I didn't think about, that I made no effort to do, other than saying yes to the opportunity. And I've really enjoyed that opportunity again.
I have finally found a place of healing. I have finally found a way to love and miss Rhett and love this life at the same time. And that has taken forever. But it's so good. It's so good to be able to walk in happiness again, walk in hope. The kiddos are great. Jimmy and I love empty nesting. We do HelloFresh every night, and we're watching Netflix series, and I don't know, I was so tired of being sad. And it feels so much better to walk in joy.
I think that Rhett left a legacy of enjoying life, of living life wide open.
The joy that he lived with, the way that he treated and loved other people, that to me excites my soul, and it makes me happy in a sense that I even had time with Rhett.
It's hard to see at first, but here I am a few years later, and there's definitely hope. And so I'm off at this crazy school doing fun things that I think he gets to look down and be proud.
I was listening to country music the other day, and I heard this song, and it said, "It don't hurt like it used to." And I stopped in my tracks. And I used to would have felt guilty saying that. And it still hurts. I'm gonna miss him forever, but it doesn't hurt like it used to.
Keep the doors open. You will see hope hit you from all areas of life, some of which you never expected. And it'll be life-changing. Doesn't make it easy, but it means life can be good again, and it will be good again.
I know where he's at. I got one kid that's made the target of heaven, and I got 2 kids that are living large here. And I'm gonna enjoy the kids that are here, and I'm gonna celebrate them, and I'm gonna celebrate Jimmy, I'm gonna celebrate my accomplishments, and I'll skid into heaven one day and see Rhett. And it's all good.